Welcome to our daily reflection for this Monday, July 15th. And today, the Lord talks a challenging word to His people and to us. He says it's not enough if we're going to, profess God's statutes if our heart is far from Him. It's not enough that what we do in offering sacrifices and doing religious observance if our heart is not obedient and loving of God first and foremost. And this challenge gets right to the heart of the gospel today, where Jesus says something very, very hard. Something that, it's a gospel preaching that's not very popular. Jesus says, look, you have to love me more than your own father and mother, more than your own brother and sister, and more than your own children, right? And if you're going to follow me, you have to put me first. That is extraordinarily demanding. But God can only be God. You cannot have another God besides Him. And that's even family. And Jesus knows that one of the greatest natural goods is family. Father, mother, that's why it's the fourth commandment. Honor your father and mother. And the importance of parents loving and caring for their children, very important, right? The greatest bonds in this world, apart from God, is family. And yet Jesus says clearly, that is a good. You need to honor your father and mother, and you need to love your children, but you have to put me first. In other words, if it comes down to God versus your children or God versus your parents, you have to follow God. How many young saints were called to religious life, to priesthood, or to be a religious sister, and it was not what their parents wanted, and their parents disapproved? They had to put God first over their parents' desire for them to be successful or to be a lawyer or a doctor or have worldly success. They had to fulfill the will of God first. And how many parents had to teach their children to follow God's moral law, and their children didn't want to do the law of God and wanted to live a life of sin, and they had to witness to them and discipline them according to God's ways, and their children rebelled. And yet in each case, God demands that we put Him first, and that's very, very hard. But if God is not in the first place, nothing is in its right place. And that is a very difficult word. And we see this with the first reading, where God says to Israel, listen to my word. And He tells them it's not enough that they offer sacrifices and do ritual observance. Their hearts are far from Him. And God cares, as we see with also the Psalm, where the Psalm upbraids Israel for, look, I know you do your sacrifices and you do ritual observance, but you're not taking on my word into your hearts and following me deeply. In other words, God wants more than our actions and our sacrifices. He wants our heart. In other words, God goes deeper than our deeds and than our performance. He goes into the interior of our heart and our intentions. And so today in our meditation, we have to ask ourselves, do I put God above everyone else and all else? God is demanding, and He goes as deep as the deepest depths of your heart. He wants it all. Can you give it? May the Lord bless and keep you.
This daily reflection is brought to you thanks to the generous support of the Mission Circle. Join the Mission Circle to help Catholics worldwide understand, live, and share their faith. Sign up at missioncircle.org today.